Jack Monroe didn't think much about space. His mind was usually focused on the cars he fixed at his small garage in Oakville, Ohio. But on weekends, Jack liked to tinker with electronics in his basement. His latest project was improving an old ham radio he had bought at a yard sale. It was a rainy Saturday when Jack connected the final wire to his modified radio. He had added some parts from an old microwave and a circuit board from a broken laptop. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he hoped it would pick up more stations. "Let's see if this thing works now," Jack said to himself as he turned the dial. Instead of static or voices, a strange humming filled the room. The lights in his basement flickered, and the radio's display showed symbols Jack had never seen before. He was about to unplug it when a voice came through the speaker. "Transmission received from unregistered sector. Identify your communication protocol and species designation." Jack stared at the radio. The voice didn't sound human. It had an odd echo and seemed to translate itself as it spoke. "Hello, this is Jack Monroe, from Earth," he said, unsure if he should be talking to his radio. There was a long pause. "Earth? Not in our registry. Scanning. Scanning. Primitive technology detected. How are you accessing the Galactic Communication Network?" Jack looked at his modified radio. "I just fixed up this old ham radio. I didn't mean to access any network." Across the galaxy, in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, alarms were sounding. High Counselor Zix Tar, with his blue skin and 4 eyes, stood up from his ornate chair. The other council members from 27 different species looked equally concerned. "What is happening?" Zix Tar demanded. A technician rushed in. "High Counselor, we've detected an unauthorized access to the GCN from an unregistered planet. The species calls it Earth and claims to be using something called a ham radio to access our network." "Impossible," said Counselor Vreet, a tall insect-like being. "The GCN requires quantum entanglement technology at minimum. No primitive species could access it by accident." Within hours, a scout ship was sent to investigate. The ship's scanners showed that Earth was indeed a developing world, with technology far below what should be needed to access the GCN. 1 week later, Jack was still trying to figure out why his radio was picking up strange voices when a bright light appeared outside his house. He walked onto his front lawn and watched as a silver disk slowly descended from the night sky. Jack didn't run. He wasn't even scared. He was just curious about what was happening. A door opened in the disk, and a tall, slender figure stepped out. It had greenish skin and large almond-shaped eyes. "Are you Jack Monroe?" the alien asked in perfect English. Jack nodded, too surprised to speak. "I am Mealvox, representative of the Galactic Council. Your communication device has caused quite a stir." 2 days later, the United Nations held an emergency meeting. Dr. Allison Wright, head of the hastily formed First Contact Committee, sat across from Mealvox. "So you're saying Jack's radio shouldn't be able to reach your network?" Dr. Wright asked. "It should be impossible," Mealvox replied. "Our scientists are still trying to understand how he did it. The materials he used are extremely basic." Dr. Wright smiled. "That's just Jack. He's always been good with his hands. This was just a weekend project for him. You should see some of the other gadgets in his garage." Mealvox's expression changed. "Other gadgets? Similar to this communication device?" "Oh, probably a dozen more interesting things," Dr. Wright said casually. "Jack's always tinkering with something." On the Galactic Council ship orbiting Earth, Mealvox sent an urgent message to High Counselor Zix Tar. "The human modified their primitive technology by accident. They don't even understand what they've done. And more concerning, this Jack Monroe has apparently created many similar weekend projects." High Counselor Zix Tar read the message twice. Then he called for an emergency council session. Humanity had just become the most interesting and terrifying species in the known galaxy. 6 months after Earth's first contact with the Galactic Council, life had changed dramatically for humans. News stations constantly covered alien visits, Schools taught basic facts about the 27 council species, and in small towns across America, people were still tinkering in their garages. Kevin Barnes wiped sweat from his forehead as he focused on the toaster in front of him. The afternoon sun streamed through the small window of his apartment in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Kevin had dropped out of college 2 years ago and now worked the morning shift at Molly's Diner. Every day, he made toast for customers who complained it was either too light or too dark. There has to be a way to make perfect toast every time, Kevin muttered to himself. He had taken apart his toaster and added some parts from his old microwave. He had also installed a small crystal he had found on a hike last week. The crystal glowed slightly blue when he touched it. Kevin connected the final wire and plugged in his modified toaster. He dropped in a slice of bread and pushed the lever down. 5 seconds later, the toast popped up, perfectly golden brown. "That's weird," Kevin said. He tried again with another slice. Again, 5 seconds to perfect toast. Kevin shrugged and took his invention to work the next day. The customers at Molly's Diner loved the fast, perfect toast. No one thought much about how it worked. It was just a better toaster. 3 weeks later, a team of Galactic Council scientists arrived on Earth. They were there to assess humanity's technological progress. The Council wanted to know if humans were advancing too quickly now that they had access to alien knowledge. Council scientist Colvex, a tall being with purple skin and 6 fingers on each hand, was checking readings on a small device when he stopped suddenly outside Molly's Diner. "I'm detecting a temporal anomaly," he said to his team. "It's coming from inside this food establishment." They entered the diner and found Kevin making toast for the breakfast rush. "Excuse me," Colvex said, approaching the counter. "May I examine your cooking device?" Kevin shrugged. "Sure, but it's just a toaster I fixed up." Colvex scanned the toaster with his device. His eyes widened as he turned to his team and spoke in his native language. The other scientists gathered around, their expressions showing increasing alarm. "Is something wrong?" Kevin asked. "How did you create this?" Colvex asked, his voice shaking slightly. "I just wanted to make better toast," Kevin explained. "It used to take too long, and the results were inconsistent. Now it's perfect every time." "Do you understand what you've done?" Colvex asked. "You've created a localized time dilation field. The toast cooks for 3 minutes, but only 5 seconds pass outside the field." Kevin blinked. "Is that bad?" "Most species take thousands of years to discover time manipulation technology," another scientist said. "The Council strictly regulates it due to the risks of temporal paradoxes. I just added some parts and this cool crystal I found," Kevin said, pointing to the blue crystal. "No big deal." The scientists exchanged worried glances. One of them was already sending an urgent message to the Galactic Council. 2 days later, High Counselor Zixtar called an emergency meeting. The Grand Chamber was filled with nervous representatives from all Council species. "Another human invention has surpassed technology that took our civilizations millennia to develop," Zixtar announced. "This time, a human has created a time dilation device for the purpose of toasting bread." Counselor Vreet stood up. "This is too dangerous. Humans don't understand the power they're playing with. I propose we quarantine Earth before they accidentally destroy space-time itself." The chamber erupted in shouting and arguments. Some council members agreed with Vreet. Others argued the humans had potential and should be guided, not isolated. After hours of debate, the motion to quarantine Earth was narrowly defeated. Instead, the council decided to send more scientists to study human innovation methods. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Kevin had already forgotten about the alien visit. He was now working on a new project, making the perfect cup of coffee in under 10 seconds. Susan Miller loved her garden more than anything. At 72 years old, the retired kindergarten teacher spent most of her days tending to her flowers in Palm Beach, Florida. Her roses were her pride and joy. Every year, she won first place at the local garden show. This year, Susan wanted her roses to be even more spectacular. She mixed various household items in her garden shed to create what she called her super fertilizer. She used vinegar, eggshells, coffee grounds, and a few other things she found around her house. Just a pinch of this and that, Susan told her neighbor as she stirred the mixture in an old bucket. When she applied the fertilizer to her roses, something amazing happened. The plants grew twice as fast and produced flowers 3 times larger than normal. The colors were more vibrant, and the scent was stronger than any rose anyone had ever smelled. Susan was delighted but not surprised. She had always had a green thumb. 1 month after Susan created her fertilizer, a delegation from the Galactic Council arrived on Earth. They were agricultural representatives looking to establish trade relations. Earth had many unique plants that could be valuable across the galaxy. The aliens visited various farms and gardens across the planet. When they came to Palm Beach, they were drawn to Susan's garden. Their scanners detected unusual plant activity. Trelnar, the lead agricultural scientist, was the first to see Susan's roses. His species had skin like tree bark and eyes that shimmered like dew. He froze in place when he saw the flowers. "Who created these plants?" he asked a local official. "Oh, those are Susan Miller's roses," the official replied. "She wins the garden show every year." Trelnar approached Susan, who was pruning her roses while humming a tune. "Excuse me," Trelnar said politely. "May I ask what you've done to these flowers?" Susan smiled at the tree-like alien. "I made my special fertilizer. Would you like the recipe?" Without waiting for an answer, Susan led Trelnar to her garden shed. She showed him the bucket where she mixed her ingredients. Trelnar scanned the mixture with a small device. His wooden face couldn't show much expression, but his leaves began to tremble. "This is impossible," he whispered. Susan didn't hear him. She was busy explaining how she applied the fertilizer and how often. Trelnar's assistant, a being that looked like a tall blue fern, came into the shed. Trelnar showed the scan results to his assistant, who also began to tremble. "Is something wrong?" Susan finally asked, noticing their reaction. "Mrs. Miller," Trelnar said slowly, "your fertilizer is a molecular restructuring compound. It manipulates cellular energy conversion at the quantum level. This technology would solve food shortages across 17 star systems." Susan laughed. "Oh, it's nothing fancy. Just things I had around the house." "Things you had around the house," Trelnar repeated, his voice barely audible. That evening, the Galactic Council held an emergency meeting. For the first time, they did it behind closed doors, with no public record kept. First a communication device, then a time dilation field, and now a molecular restructuring compound. High Counselor Zix Tar said to the assembled council, "All created by humans who thought they were making simple, everyday items." "Are they playing dumb?" asked Counselor Vreet. "No species could accidentally create such advanced technology." "Our scans indicate they genuinely don't understand what they're doing," replied a science officer. "Somehow, they intuitively make connections that other species need advanced computers to calculate." The council debated for hours. Finally, they decided to establish a special committee to monitor human inventions. They also agreed that all future discussions about Earth would be kept confidential. Meanwhile, Susan Miller won the garden show again. She shared her fertilizer with friends, who used it on their vegetables. Within months, farmers across Florida were growing crops in half the time, using Susan's formula. And Susan had already moved on to her next project, making a better insect repellent for her garden. Nathan Carter stared at his computer screen, his eyes red from lack of sleep. Rain pounded against the windows of the small apartment in Seattle that he shared with his business partner, Olivia Diaz. They had been working on their video game for 18 months, and they were finally close to finishing. "I still think the alien movements look weird," Olivia said, leaning over Nathan's shoulder. Her coffee mug left a ring on the desk as she set it down. "I know," Nathan sighed. "Our physics engine can't handle the way I want them to move. The creatures just don't look natural. Their game, Cosmic Explorers, was about humans exploring alien planets. They wanted it to stand out from other games by having truly unique alien creatures with realistic movements. What if we start from scratch? Olivia suggested. Instead of trying to make the aliens move like Earth animals, what if we build a system that simulates how they would actually evolve in different environments? Nathan thought for a moment. That's brilliant. Let's do it. For the next 3 weeks, Nathan and Olivia barely left their apartment. They ordered pizza, drank too much coffee, and built a new physics engine for their game. They created algorithms that simulated gravity, atmosphere, and terrain, then let their program predict how creatures would evolve to move in those conditions. When they finally finished, they were amazed by the results. The alien creatures in their game moved in ways they had never imagined. Some flowed like water. Others seemed to bend space as they walked. "This is incredible," Olivia said as she watched a creature with 6 legs moving across a low-gravity moon. "It feels so real." They released their game online the next day. Cosmic Explorers quickly became popular among indie game fans who praised its unique alien designs and realistic movement patterns. 3 days after the game's release, a Council science vessel in orbit around Earth detected unusual data patterns in Earth's internet traffic. They traced it to a new video game and began to analyze it. Council scientist Murdoch, a being composed mostly of light and energy, downloaded the game and started to play it. After an hour, he stopped and called his team together. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a screen showing one of the game's alien creatures. "The movement algorithm for this life form exactly matches the evolutionary path of the Zortal, a species we haven't even discovered yet, but whose existence we have theorized." The other scientists crowded around the screen. They ran tests on the game's physics engine and were shocked by what they found. "This isn't just a game," another scientist said. "It's an advanced biological simulation system. It can accurately predict evolutionary paths based on environmental factors. And humans created this for entertainment?" Murdoch asked, his light dimming slightly in what his species considered a frown. Within hours, the Council received a full report. High Counselor Zixtar called yet another emergency meeting, this one even more secretive than the last. "The humans have now created an evolutionary prediction system more advanced than our best biological models," Zixtar told the assembled council. "And they did it to make a video game more realistic." Counselor Vreet, who had been warning about the human problem since first contact, stood up. "We can no longer ignore the threat. These humans create dangerous technology without understanding its power. We must take action." The Council voted to implement a new protocol. All Earth media would be screened before being allowed in Council space. They also decided to place monitoring satellites around Earth to detect any new technological breakthroughs. Meanwhile, in Seattle, Nathan and Olivia were already working on their next project. They wanted to create a more immersive gaming experience. What if we could make the player actually feel like they're in the game? Nathan suggested. Olivia grinned. "I have some ideas about that. Let's start coding." Across the galaxy, alarm bells were about to ring again. Joe Adams wiped grease from his hands as he stepped back to admire his work. The metal frame in his barn in rural Michigan gleamed under the overhead lights. It was starting to look like an actual spaceship. "What do you think?" he asked his friend Maria Rodriguez, who was checking calculations on her tablet. "I think we're crazy," Maria laughed. "But the math looks good. If your engine design works, we might actually reach Mars." Joe and Maria had been friends since college, where they both studied engineering. Now they worked at different companies, but they spent weekends on what they called their fun project, building a spaceship from scratch. 5 friends helped them on weekends. They used scrap metal, old car parts, and equipment Joe bought at auctions. The heart of the ship was Joe's new engine design, which he had sketched on a napkin during his lunch break 3 months ago. NASA and those private companies make spaceflight seem so complicated, Joe often said. I bet we can do it simpler and cheaper. After 8 months of weekend work, the ship was almost ready. They named it Backyard Explorer. It looked like a cross between a small airplane and a submarine, with homemade solar panels covering much of its surface. "One more weekend and we can test the engine," Joe said, checking his watch. "It's getting late. Let's clean up." The following Saturday, their small team gathered in the barn. They had moved the ship outside to a clearing behind Joe's property. Everyone wore matching t-shirts that Maria had made, with Backyard Explorer printed across the front. "Systems check," Joe asked, sitting in the pilot's seat. The inside of the ship was simple, with 2 seats and a control panel made from modified car dashboards and computer screens. "All green," Maria replied from the seat next to him. The others watched from a safe distance. Joe took a deep breath and pressed the ignition button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a low hum filled the air. The ship vibrated slightly and slowly rose 3 feet off the ground. "It works," someone shouted. Everyone cheered as Joe carefully maneuvered the ship in a small circle around the clearing before landing it again. "Mars, here we come," Joe said, grinning widely. 2 weeks later, after testing all systems multiple times, Joe and Maria decided they were ready for their first real flight. Their plan was simple: fly to Mars, take pictures to prove they made it, and come back. They launched at dawn on a clear Sunday morning. The ship rose smoothly into the sky, much faster than they had expected. Within minutes, they were in space. "The engine is performing better than my calculations predicted," Maria said, checking her instruments. "We're already at escape velocity." Joe nodded, focused on piloting. "Let's see what this baby can really do." He increased power to the engine. The stars around them seemed to stretch and blur. Suddenly, they were moving faster than should have been possible. In the Galactic Council's monitoring station near Earth, alarms blared. An operator stared at the readings in disbelief. "High Command, we've detected a ship leaving Earth," the operator reported. It's achieving speeds that should be impossible with their technology. It appears to be entering some form of subspace." A fleet of Council ships scrambled to intercept the human vessel. They tracked it all the way to Mars, where it landed before they could reach it. When the Council ships arrived at Mars, they found Joe and Maria setting up a picnic table outside their homemade spacecraft. "Hi there," Joe called, waving at the aliens emerging from their advanced ships. "Want a sandwich?" "We packed extra." The Council representatives approached cautiously. "How did you achieve those speeds?" one asked. "Your vessel entered a form of subspace travel that our scientists have been researching for centuries." Joe and Maria exchanged confused looks. "We just followed the design I sketched on a napkin," Joe explained. "Nothing fancy." That evening, the Galactic Council called its most secure meeting yet. High Counselor Zixtar addressed the Council with a grim expression. "From now on, all sessions regarding Earth inventions will be held in total secrecy," he announced. "Humans have now casually revolutionized interstellar travel. We must prepare for whatever they might invent next." Pete Johnson yawned as he walked down the empty hallway of Pine Creek Medical Center. The night shift was always quiet in this rural hospital, which was why Pete liked it. As a nurse for 15 years, he enjoyed the peace of night shifts, when he could think clearly and take his time with patients. Tonight, however, he was frustrated. The lab was backed up again, and blood test results were taking hours to come back. A young girl in room 204 was waiting for results that would tell her doctors what was making her sick. "There has to be a faster way," Pete muttered as he entered the small hospital lab. The lab technician had gone on break, leaving Pete alone with the equipment. He looked at the blood analyzer machine. It was old and slow. The hospital couldn't afford a new one. Pete had always been good with machines. In high school, he had won science fairs by improving existing devices. Now, he looked at the blood analyzer with the same curiosity. "I wonder," he said to himself, opening the machine's service panel. Over the next 5 night shifts, Pete spent his free time working on the blood analyzer. He added parts from his old smartphone and some circuits he ordered online. He rewired sections and reprogrammed the software using skills he had learned in an online course. When he finished, the machine looked the same from the outside, but inside it was very different. "Let's see if it works any better now," Pete said, running a test sample. To his surprise, the machine returned results in 30 seconds instead of an hour. Even more surprising, the results showed much more detail than before. It not only identified current problems in the blood, but also showed signs of potential future issues. Pete started using his improved scanner for patients during his shifts. Doctors were amazed by the speed and detail of the results. Soon, all the night shift staff were using what they called Pete's Quick Scanner. 1 month later, the Galactic Council arranged a medical technology exchange with Earth. A team of council medical officers visited hospitals around the world to share basic medical knowledge and learn about human healthcare. Dr. Excelnar, a tall being with silvery skin and 4 arms, visited Pine Creek Medical Center during the night shift. Pete was running blood samples when the alien doctor entered the lab. "This is our blood analysis room," the hospital administrator explained to Dr. Excelnar. Dr. Excelnar nodded politely, but then froze when he saw the readings on Pete's scanner screen. "What is this device?" he asked, moving closer to look at the results. "Just our blood analyzer," Pete said with a shrug. "I made some improvements to speed it up." Dr. Excelnar's eyes widened. He pulled out a small device and scanned Pete's machine. "This is impossible," he whispered. "This device is mapping quantum signatures in biological matter. It's detecting illness patterns before they physically manifest." Pete looked confused. "I just made it faster and more accurate. Is that a problem?" Dr. Excelnar stared at Pete. "The most advanced medical systems in the galaxy cannot do what this machine does. Our scientists have only theorized about quantum diagnostic technology." "Oh," Pete said, surprised. "Well, feel free to take notes if it helps your people." The next day, the Galactic Council received an urgent report about the modified blood scanner. High Counselor Zixtar called yet another emergency session. "Humans have now moved into medical technology," Zixtar told the council. "A human nurse has created a quantum diagnostic tool as a side project because he was impatient with the speed of existing equipment." "We can no longer treat this as coincidence," said Counselor Vreet. "The humans are too dangerous. They create revolutionary technology by accident without understanding the implications." After much debate, the council created a specialized human containment committee with the sole purpose of monitoring and potentially limiting Earth innovations. Meanwhile, Pete Johnson had already forgotten about the alien visitor. He was now working on improving the hospital's X-ray machine, which he thought was too slow and unclear. He had some interesting ideas about how to make it better. Lisa Green loved teaching 5th grade science at Oakwood Elementary School. Nothing made her happier than seeing her students' eyes light up when they learned something new. This year, she wanted to do something special for the science fair. "Class, we're going to work on a clean energy project," she announced one Monday morning. "We'll build something that uses sunshine as power." The children cheered. They loved making things in Ms. Green's class. "What can we build?" asked Billy, a boy with glasses and wild hair. Lisa smiled. "How about a special kind of battery that stores sunshine?" For the next 2 weeks, Lisa guided her students in creating what they called a sunshine battery. They used materials from a local craft store: copper wire, small mirrors, a glass jar, some chemicals from a basic chemistry set, and other simple items. Lisa kept the science simple for her 10-year-old students. She explained energy conversion in ways they could understand, using colorful diagrams and fun examples. Energy changes from one form to another, just like water can be liquid, ice, or steam, she told them as they worked. The children followed her instructions, adding their own ideas along the way. When they finished, they had created a small device that glowed with a steady blue light when placed in the sun. "Look," "Ms. Green, it works," said Emma, clapping her hands with excitement. "It sure does," Lisa replied, proud of her student's work. "Let's put it in the window and see how long it glows." They placed the device on the classroom windowsill. To everyone's surprise, it continued glowing all day and all night. The next morning, it was still glowing just as brightly. "That's strange," Lisa said. "It should have used up its stored energy by now." She checked the device carefully but found nothing wrong. In fact, it seemed to be producing more energy than it had the day before. 3 days later, the energy output had doubled again. Lisa was puzzled but delighted by the success of their project. The children were already planning to show it at the science fair the following week. Unknown to Lisa and her students, their simple sunshine battery had caught the attention of the Galactic Council's Earth monitoring system. A strange energy signature was coming from Oakwood Elementary School. Council energy specialists were sent to investigate. They arrived at the school disguised as educational consultants. Dr. Zandar, the lead specialist, asked to see the science projects. When he saw the glowing device on the windowsill, he nearly dropped his scanning equipment. Who made this?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "My 5th grade class," Lisa said proudly. "It's our sunshine battery for the science fair." Dr. Zandar scanned the device carefully. His hands trembled as he read the results. "Ms. Green, do you understand what you and your students have created?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "It's just a simple project to show how sunlight can be stored as energy. This device is creating a self-sustaining fusion reaction at room temperature," Dr. Zandar explained quietly. "It produces no waste and generates more energy over time. This technology would be considered the holy grail of energy production throughout the galaxy." Lisa stared at him in shock. "But we made it with craft supplies and a chemistry set." "That's what makes it so incredible," Dr. Zandar replied. That evening, High Counselor Zixtar personally called an emergency council session. For the first time, council members had to check their weapons at the door. Emotions were running too high for safety. "An elementary school class has created cold fusion technology," Zixtar announced. "Children, using craft supplies, have solved an energy problem that our best scientists have worked on for centuries." Several council members rose to speak at once. Some demanded immediate action to contain Earth's technology. Others threatened to sever diplomatic ties with Earth out of fear. "What will these humans accidentally invent next?" asked one council member, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Meanwhile, at Oakwood Elementary, Lisa's class had already moved on to their next project, making a model of the solar system that actually floated in the air. Frank Murphy had always been a dreamer. At 45, he worked as a part-time handyman in Chicago and spent his free time tinkering in his garage. His latest project was a simple communication device to talk to his brother who lived on the other side of town. "Phone bills are too expensive," Frank told his neighbor as he twisted wires together on his workbench. "And the internet gets slow when everyone's using it. I bet I can make something better." Frank had no formal education in electronics. He learned by taking things apart and putting them back together. For his communication device, he used parts from old radios, a microwave, and some items he found at yard sales. On a Sunday afternoon in May, Frank finished his project. The device looked like a small metal box with dials, a speaker, and a microphone. He turned it on and spoke into it. "Hey, Charlie, can you hear me? It's Frank." Instead of his brother's voice, Frank heard a strange humming sound. Then, a voice that didn't sound human responded. "Contact established with Dimensional Plane 7. Identify yourself." Frank was surprised but not alarmed. "This is Frank Murphy from Chicago." "Who's this?" "I am Keeper Vor-El of the 7th dimension. How are you accessing the interdimensional frequency?" "Just built a little device to talk to my brother," Frank replied. "Must have crossed some wires somewhere." Over the next week, Frank spoke with beings from 3 different dimensions. He thought it was fascinating and modified his device to better control which dimension he contacted. The Galactic Council's Earth monitoring system detected Frank's device almost immediately. After so many human inventions causing alarm, they had created a special team called the Human Innovation Response Team to investigate any unusual signals from Earth. The team arrived at Frank's house within days. When they explained who they were, Frank invited them in for coffee and showed them his device proudly. "You've created a device that communicates with other dimensions," said the team leader, trying to remain calm. Frank nodded. "Yeah, I was aiming for across town, but I got across dimensions instead. Happy accident, I guess." The council representatives exchanged worried glances. This was beyond anything they had encountered before. They immediately arranged for Frank to address the full Galactic Council. 2 days later, Frank found himself standing in the Grand Council chamber. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors stared at him from their seats. The chamber had been specially modified. A new sign on the doors read, "Earth Discussion Sessions. Emotional Support Staff on Standby." High Counselor Zixtar, looking tired and stressed, introduced Frank to the council. "This human has created a device that communicates with other dimensions," Zixtar explained. "Mr. Murphy, please tell the council how you accomplished this." Frank smiled, completely at ease among the aliens. "Well, I just wanted to talk to my brother without paying phone bills. I put together some parts I had lying around my garage. Took me a Sunday afternoon to build it." A murmur ran through the council chamber. One member appeared to faint. Another started making a high-pitched keening sound. "Just a Sunday afternoon," repeated Zixtar, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in what humans would recognize as disbelief. After Frank's presentation, the council held their most important vote yet. They established what became known as the Earth Protocol. All sessions regarding Earth innovations would now take place in specially shielded chambers, where council members could freely express their panic without causing diplomatic incidents. They also created the most extensive monitoring system ever designed. The Human Innovation Response Team was expanded to prepare the galaxy for whatever Earth might accidentally invent next. As Frank returned to Earth, happy to have made new friends among the aliens, High Counselor Zixtar sat alone in his chamber, staring at a new report. A 12-year-old girl in Australia had just built a teleportation device for her school project. Zixtar sighed deeply and pressed the emergency meeting button again.